What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me at your next event, entertaining you and the people you love. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. For today, learn with me on What Makes You Smarter.
Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Wednesday, June 24th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Fauci quite concerned about coronavirus surge. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, said Tuesday he is, quote, quite concerned, end quote, about a, quote, disturbing, end quote, surge in COVID-19 cases in numerous states. Fauci, testifying before the House Energy and Commerce Committee, said some states are, quote, doing really well, end quote, while others are, quote, in trouble, end quote, noting that Arizona, Texas, and Florida have just reported a record number of new coronavirus cases. Fauci said the White House Coronavirus Task Force had never been told to scale back testing, contradicting President Trump's assertion at his Saturday rally in Tulsa that he ordered a testing slowdown to reduce the rise in new cases. Aides later said Trump was joking, but Trump said Tuesday, quote, I don't kid, end quote. This is according to NBC News and The Hill. Number 2, ex-prosecutor, Stone sentence reduced because U.S. attorney afraid of Trump. Assistant U.S. Attorney Aaron Zelinsky said in prepared congressional testimony to be delivered Wednesday that Attorney General William Barr and other top DOJ officials pushed for favorable treatment of Republican operative Roger Stone, a longtime advisor to President Trump, because of his, quote, relationship with the president, end quote. Zelinsky said prosecutors involved in Stone's trial for lying to Congress faced, quote, heavy pressure from the highest levels of the Department of Justice to cut Stone a break and request a light sentence. Zelinsky, one of 4 federal prosecutors who withdrew from the case, also will testify that then acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Timothy Shea, complied with pressure and reduced Stone's sentencing recommendation. Zelinsky says he was, quote, explicitly told, end quote, Shea was, quote, afraid of the president, end quote. This is according to Politico and The Washington Post. Number 3. EU reportedly prepared to block Americans from entry after borders reopen. The European Union is preparing to open its borders on July 1st, but will reportedly continue blocking Americans from entering because a recent surge in new COVID-19 cases shows the U.S. infection rate is still too high. The EU is compiling 2 potential lists of countries, one that only includes nations with an infection rate lower than the EU average of 16 per 100,000 people over the past 2 weeks, and another with some that are slightly higher. The U.S. is at 107, although that's not the sole criterion for which countries will be allowed. Either way, the U.S. seems likely to join Russia, Brazil, and China on the list of countries whose travelers will be denied entry. Brussels will reportedly be revising the list every 2 weeks, so any ban could be lifted as soon as a country's infections rates drop. This is according to the New York Times. Number 4, Brooks mourned in Atlanta funeral at MLK's former church. Scores of people mourned Rayshard Brooks, a black man fatally shot in the back by a white police officer at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Reverend Martin Luther King once preached. Brooks was shot after struggling, grabbing an officer's non-lethal taser, and running when 2 officers tried to arrest him for DUI in the parking lot of a Wendy's restaurant. Quote, we are here because individuals continue to hide behind badges and trainings and policies and procedures rather than regarding the humanity of others in general and black lives specifically, end quote. The Reverend Bernice King, the civil rights leader's daughter, told the mourners. Shortly after the service, police took into custody a woman, Natalie White, who was one of several people suspected of setting fire to the Wendy's after Brooks' death. This is according to the Associated Press and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Number 5, strong earthquake hits Mexico's Oaxaca state, killing at least 5. A 7.4 magnitude earthquake struck southern Mexico state of Oaxaca Tuesday, killing at least 5 people. Several hospitals treating COVID-19 patients suffered unspecified damages. The tremor was felt as far as Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration issued a tsunami alert covering Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, and minor tsunamis were reported in Acapulco, 2.2 feet, and Salina Cruz, 2.3 feet. Mexican authorities said within hours of the quake, magnitude 5.2 aftershocks shook Oaxaca. Damage in Oaxaca state was classified as light to moderate on the U.S. Geological Survey shake map. This is according to the Daily Mail and CNN. Number 6, absentee ballots to decide 2 key Democratic primaries. Voters went to the polls in 5 states on Tuesday, and 2 key Democratic primaries remain too close to call. It could take a week to determine the winners of a Kentucky primary to pick the Democrat who will challenge Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican. Party favorite Amy McGrath, a retired Marine lieutenant colonel, led state Representative Charles Booker, a progressive candidate backed by Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, by 9 percentage points, with most in-person ballots counted. The final count will take days because many people voted absentee due to the coronavirus pandemic. In another showdown between the Democratic Party's establishment and progressive wings, 16-term Representative Elliot Engel of New York trailed educator Jamal Bowen by 31% to 65%, although absentee ballots won't be counted for a week. This is according to Politico. Number 7, Obama, Biden bring in $11 million in virtual fundraiser. During their first joint fundraiser of 2020, former President Barack Obama and former Vice President Joe Biden brought in more than $11 million for Biden's campaign. Obama, in his first campaign appearance with Biden since endorsing him in April, warned Democrats not to be, quote, complacent or smug, end quote, heading into the November election. Donors were told they could give any amount in order to participate in the virtual event on Tuesday, and the Biden campaign said more than 175,000 grassroots contributors gave a total of $7.6 million. There was a separate online event for donors who gave large amounts of money, The Guardian reports, and that brought in more than $3.4 million. This was the most money Biden has raised during a single event since he launched his campaign. This is according to The Guardian. Number 8, Trump family asks court to block book by president's niece. President Trump's family on Tuesday asked a court to block publication of a book by Mary Trump, the president's niece. Her tell-all book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man, is due to be published July 28th by Simon & Schuster. The publisher says the book, by the daughter of President Trump's late brother, Fred Trump Jr., provides a revealing portrait of President Trump, quote, and the toxic family that made him, end quote. President Trump's younger brother, Robert Trump, requested a temporary restraining order, saying his niece was violating a non-disclosure agreement signed to settle the estate of his father, Fred Trump Sr. Mary Trump's lawyer said the family was violating the First Amendment by trying to, quote, suppress, end quote, an important book. This is according to the New York Times. Number 9, FBI says NASCAR's Bubba Wallace was not targeted by noose in garage. The FBI determined Tuesday that no federal hate crime charges were warranted over a pull rope tied into a noose on the door of Talladega Superspeedway garage assigned to Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR's only full-time black driver. NASCAR said agents sent to investigate found that the pull rope had been tied that way since last fall, long before Wallace's team was given the garage to use in a race this week. Quote, "We appreciate the FBI's quick and thorough investigation and are thankful to learn that this was not an intentional racist act against Bubba," end quote. NASCAR said in a statement, quote, "We remain steadfast in our commitment to providing a welcoming and inclusive environment for all who love racing," end quote. This is according to ESPN. Number 10, tennis champion Novak Djokovic tests positive for COVID-19. Top-ranked tennis player Novak Djokovic announced Tuesday that he and his wife had tested positive for COVID-19. The news came after Djokovic organized and played in a series of exhibition matches in Serbia and Croatia, where crowds and competitors did not practice social distancing despite the coronavirus pandemic. Djokovic was the fourth player infected after playing in the exhibitions. Djokovic previously criticized tennis officials for planned safety measures and in May broke local lockdown rules by practicing at a tennis club a week before lockdown restrictions were lifted. Quote, "Unfortunately, this virus is still present, and it is a new reality that we are still learning to cope and live with," end quote, Djokovic said in a Tuesday statement. Quote, "I am extremely sorry for each individual case of infection," end quote. This is according to the Associated Press. That's 10 things you need to know today for Wednesday, June 24th, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. I hope everybody out there is doing reasonably well. Drop me some comments. Let me know what you're up to in this time. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. Peace. I'm out of here.
If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.